flag of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, Michelle.
Jeremy McCord,
Here.
Bernie Popra,
Here.
Travis Dunlap,
Present.
Nick Loving,
Here.
Sarah Augman, here, Nicole Migalorni and Roseanne Bozak are absent.
Okay, the next thing is approval of minutes from April 4th, 2022. Is it correct that not everybody had an
Not,
opportunity
yeah,
to
I
review
didn't
it?
send it.
So would it be the wish of the board that we table that until we've all had that opportunity? Move that for next month. Next thing, communication bills and expenditures. The first thing listed on there is town code updates. Do we have anything to talk? The next thing is the updated building permit. My assumption that if you didn't know that there's an updated building permit that got put into place, how long ago?
I
was
want to
that?
say it was May 1st.
Okay, so approximately May 1st, there's an updating building permit, which is available online, yes? So if anyone has any questions about it, they might want to take the time to take a look at that, just so they're aware.
I did,
Okay,
look at this, and one thing we talked about in our whole round of code changes was on this permit, adding zoning district to it,
okay,
so that made it very clear which set of guidelines.
okay.
apply.
I will check into that to see if it's something that can be added and how difficult will it be, and if there was intentions to do that. And to find out if there was a reason that they did not do that. Report of officers, committee, staff. You have anything? Clay, did you have anything for us?
Not at this moment.
Awesome. No public hearings, old business. The first thing is the fee table. Honestly, we haven't, to my knowledge, we haven't done a lot of work on this right now because we're at a hang up where we needed a lot of input from the building commissioner. Because we were talking about changing fees and other items on there. And obviously, I think it'd be premature for us to do anything without a current building commissioner in place. Travis, do you have anything to add on that?
I would agree with that. It's fair assessment.
Outstanding. The next thing is still on here for old business, which is solar panel discussion. I think for the most part, I just wanted to be clear, I mean, because this was from, obviously, we didn't have a meeting last month. The solar panel discussion where we hung up is that there's state codes, but the one issue is that the fire department wants to sign off on disconnects. Is that correct?
Yeah.
That's the biggest issue. And unfortunately, I'm not a building commissioner, they'll see if they have a way to make sure that's happening, Sean.
But if it's just part of the process and the building commissioner gets an application for a solar installation, can the building commissioner just send it off to the fire department?
I agree, I think as long as that is, a process is put in place and they move forward with that, I think that's great. I guess our biggest hang up is that, again,
Don't have.
don't have building commissioner. So. I guess for the meantime, I can also include that and we'll try and reach out to Lori and see if there's a process to put that in place to appease our fire department in the meantime. Just so we make sure that there's nothing going in that would be unsafe, if you will.
I think part of it also was that way the fire department had a
Record of.
advance warning that where they were installed, so they would know when they, before they got there, to plan for someone to go to that disconnect.
Gotcha.
Kind of like the tags for engineers.
Gotcha. Anybody else have anything on solar panels? Next thing on here is section 9-2, grass weeds in excess of 8 inches. I had a brief discussion with our attorney. And I kind of think we have some sort of a potential direction, but I think we're gonna probably be better off circling again for our building commissioner, but the biggest issue is I can dig in a little bit deeper and just verify that I haven't found a definition for noxious weeds and rampant vegetation in our town code. So and then in the violations bureau, it defines it as in excess of 8 inches. But it doesn't say 8 inches anywhere else, so it makes it kind of confusing.
And I would add to that, that we should add not only the definition, but include the grass in excess of whatever the height is. You know, different communities have different heights. You know, at 8 inches, if that's what you want to make it, but looking at chapter 9, section 9.1, it says definitions, but it really is just defining nuisance, so we want to tweak that a little bit. But yeah, if you want to search in code, you can see if there's any other reference to noxious weed, rank vegetation, or the height.
Right.
I would say the only thing I would add to that though, like what you're talking about, I mean, 8 inches is tall, but there's plenty of guys like that are cutting it on a regular basis at 5 inches. So I mean, if it grows beyond that, I mean, like, so you're like, if you are 3 inches and it rains for a week, I could see it at 8. I mean, depending on how, but I mean, like, Lions cuts his grass like 4.5, 5 inches.
I cut mine the highest that the lawnmower will go.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, and mine goes to 5 inches.
Yeah. I don't know.
So I think that if we're looking at what you're gonna issue a violation for, that 8 inches is kind of, it's gonna be difficult, both for the homeowners and for the building commissioner. I would think that 12 inches or higher would be, well, 12 inches maybe is more reasonable for lawns. If you're gonna get into the question, what about these empty lots that are definitely, to keep them under 12 inches is sometimes a lot. It's difficult, so that may need to be addressed differently.
Right, and some of there was a definition that we found through Fishers that might potentially take care of some of that. It references like undeveloped areas and things of that nature.
Oh, yeah.
Well, this is where having a building commissioner will help, because that person will be able to tell you, this is where we're seeing the problem, this is the heights. You know,
Right.
where it's, I mean,
And I think potentially at this point, maybe it'd be just, all right, we'll check with these surrounding communities and our neighboring areas and see where they're limiting that height. You know, we have to reinvent the wheel. Okay. Anybody else have anything else on grass and weeds? Come on.
I think 8 is good. I think 12 is past the point of bad.
Yeah,
I know
I think 12 would be hard to put my mower through.
Yeah, it's
I mean,
okay.
I don't know that you could cut the grass if it was 12 inches tall.
And then what do you do with it once you've cut it?
Right.
Is,
We don't pick up clippings.
yeah,
So Republicans, or waste management, whoever they are. Our garbage pickup takes that. Yes, as long as they're in a paper bag. Or in the can.
Fair enough.
We've called about it several times. It's just sure.
Okay, moving on to new business. First thing is review of bonds, maintenance guarantees, letters of credit. And then under that it specifically says the release of maintenance bond for Trail Creek LLC. So, Michelle, the specific, what's the amount of the one that we are referencing?
It
this
is
specific
the
bond.
$8,103.70.
The letter of credit, this shows that it expired last July.
Correct.
Yeah. But I believe this is the one that was because of utilities or something, it wasn't released.
Mr. Clay, he's present. Would you like to kind of brief us on
Yeah,
what
this-
communication you've had?
This was due to expire last July. There was a discussion about, this is that second phase of Trail Creek, big lots. One of the homes doesn't have a public right of way, so we created easements so they can get their sewer, water, and electric back to them. It was all approved here. And then the meeting in June of last year, there was a question, let's just say the homeowner was here, Randy Reagan, and they suggested that I extend the utilities. I said, well, we put in the easements for that. So as time went on, I extended the utilities just to get it done with, not just for his lot, but for the other lots. And that's where we're at now. And when I say extended utilities, I ran power, gas, and water for the one that was further back.
Okay,
And what was in question was a lot that was way back, and who has to extend it all the way to his lot and back.
Were they extended to the property lines for both?
All the utilities were there when it was approved with the easements granted also.
anybody have any questions on this? I mean, I guess my confusion is just that we're holding up on that it expired. We should have either, if there was something that needed to be done. I guess my loss is why we didn't either just call the bond and do it, or release the bond.
The house is built and they're living in it now.
Right. So, I mean, in this instance, I mean, we don't have any reports of anything that's not done, right? I mean, there's no, so.
Honestly, I thought we'd already released them.
Right, so I mean, if that's the case. Would we need a motion to be able to release this, or is it just? Because I mean, we're basically requesting Jane Jordan to release it to us at this point.
Yeah, we probably should go through that formality then. I mean, just to provide some background, the homework came to town council a handful of times, as I recall. I have to look at the minutes to know which month. The town's position was essentially, there's a dispute between the two of the builder and the developer, Mr. Blake, who sold a lot. But if we are still holding this, yeah, it should be released or shown that it's no longer, I don't think it's bond, I think it's a letter of credit. So I think that may have expired, but I don't have, I'm not having it in front of me, I don't know what the terms say.
And you think we should make a motion for that?
I'm not sure if the clerk treasurer would want that, but I think it definitely needs to be.
She will.
It probably wouldn't hurt.
Yes.
I'll make a motion to release document number 801325 in the amount of $8,103.70.
I have a motion.
Second.
I have a second. Any discussion? Roll call, Michelle.
Travis Dunlap,
Yes.
Nick Loving,
Yes.
Sarah Eldman,
Yes.
Bernie Paprad,
Yes,
Jeremy McCart.
Yes. Michelle, just to add to that, can we make sure that we send an email to Jane or reach out to her, call her tomorrow and make sure that she knows that this motion was made and that we would like that released at her convenience.
Okay,
And I would. Have you talked to Jane recently or no?
Not recently, no.
If you have it handy, if you don't, can you give Mr. Clay's contact information and make sure that's included?
Jane has my information.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that
Yeah.
way there was no, I don't want to hold you up any more than you already have been, and I apologize for us not having a quorum last month. It was a surprise.
In the issue of not holding people up, can we do anything about this one that expires in 5 days?
Yeah. We have the punch list review from Global.
usually for road
for
maintenance, yeah.
road maintenance.
So I think that was requested back in April.
Should have that.
We should have- we talked about that. before.
Yeah, and I don't think I never heard anything back from Shem either.
Okay,
I will email him tomorrow.
Can we release that?
do you know what the stat, I mean, I understand this isn't necessarily
Yeah,
your job to tell us what's wrong with your road, but do you know what the status is, if there's anything that needs to be addressed or?
no, we put in just a private drive, that's what we bonded for that, for the roadway.
For the amount of $3,646?
Right,
Okay, so that's for,
it was.
I know using phase two isn't the correct terminology there, but
Right.
it's for that private drive that accesses to those two same lots that we were just talking about, correct?
The southeast corner of phase one into phase two.
Correct.
So I guess my question with that is because that's privately maintained. What,
It's the developer's responsibility to put it in, and then he has to warrant the work.
There was a small section that needed to be put in with some curb. And then it goes into the.
okay, so we're talking about the completion, like basically the transition from phase one to phase two
Yes.
of what we requested as far as the curbing and other
Yeah, there's a
items.
small section of curbing.
Okay, so that is town.
And then into the private drive, which is not the town, it's private.
Correct. So we wouldn't have anything that we needed to be inspected with the private drive, we would just need to make sure that the stuff that is gonna be town is what.
In the southeast corner, it's like the side yard of that corner lot right there.
Right. Any curb that needed to be extended or whatever was done. So,
And when I walk, I go around the corner and keep going, I can go that way, so I couldn't tell you what it looks like. Can we release it pending, can we release it on June 11th pending approval from the engineer? So he doesn't have to come back next month?
I mean, I suppose I would rather hear from the engineer first, and we can send him an email to say, you know, got the report all as well. Really.
That's fine, I mean, that's.
okay, I appreciate that, I mean,
Whatever we've done next week.
So-
That's fine.
yeah, we definitely need to reach out and get that done. I mean, that way we can go ahead and get this potentially released at the next meeting. So. Michelle, I'm gonna kind of rely on you on this one, because I don't know, and I don't know if you're gonna be able to answer this, because we don't have a building commissioner, but. 1134 South Babcock,
Mhm.
lot 1, is that the one that is going through
BZA,
BZA?
yes.
Okay. Just because potentially,
Before we get too far, we need to have a motion on the table.
okay, do I,
To release.
oh, do we have a second?
Sarah?
No, that was one before we voted on it.
I thought we already did that, because I already recommended that we talk,
Oh,
send that to Jane and.
I'm sorry, I didn't put my check marks. Go ahead. My fault.
So,
Are you talking about the phase two one, Nick?
Yeah,
He's talking
that's
about
not, we
the,
didn't have a motion for that, but that was the.
yeah, we don't need a motion, so we send it this one, so I think we're good. You got me all lost
I've
now.
confused you now.
So 1134 South Babcock, that's the one that you're saying that's going through the BZA.
Yes,
I don't think there's anything that we can or should do about that at this point then. I mean, they're obviously they're past their time, but if they're actively working about their yard.
where are we on the
the
agenda?
conditional certificate of occupancy,
So we are still on the review of bonds, maintenance guarantees, letters of credit. If you look at that, the second table, the top line, it says Badcock subdivision, yard security. It's document number 3762.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
So that one is expired.
Yeah, so they went to the BZA because.
Yeah. They wanted to do something different.
Well, and it's not as suitable for putting a yard in because where they built on the property and putting in a yard. I can't remember what the BZA for you.
Bernie wasn't
I
there.
wasn't there, but
Are we able to talk about it? I went to the meeting, but I don't know if we're allowed to talk about it.
Yeah, refresh my recollection, my memory, I can't remember.
Okay, so they went to that meeting, the BZA meeting, and I wrote down a couple of the phrases they used, and I'm sorry I didn't bring my notes with me, but one of the things that they said is they wanted to leave it as natural habitat and do nothing to it. I thought when they came here, our understanding was they were gonna present us with a native type landscape plan. And the landscape plan they gave to BZA, which I didn't see, they said didn't affect the front, it only was right by the houses, which would not be considered part of the yard, so. I was surprised at the meeting that there was that approach, which was different than when they came here. Does that sound right, Ted?
It's accurate. Long and short, it's slated for public hearing
This,
end of this month.
Yeah,
But since they're actively working, I guess my thought is, I don't know how the board feels about this, but I don't think that it would be appropriate for us to potentially call their bond and put their yard in. I wouldn't want, like, I don't think that would be the right thing to do. I think, because if they're actively working with another board, they kind of have that good faith of trying to do something.
are these, they expire 6 months or a year after they're issued?
Says 180 days after issuance, if you look all over the right.
Yeah.
They filed the BZA, or I just pulled up the rejection form, they filed for a development standard variance April 21st. And on the notes, on the rejection form notes, a conditional certificate of occupancy was issued with a sufficient security, $3,000 posted on 11/19/21. No conditional permit certificate of occupancy issued shall be issued for a time period more than 180 days. And then it expires on 5/18/22, so they had a their certificate of occupancy is essentially expired, but they're in there, from my understanding.
But this actually applies to several of these, that's why I'm asking. If, I mean, that's when our ordinance says they're supposed to be completed. But when does their bond or check or whatever, when is that no longer good for the town?
Well, that's a good point, because 180 days on the rest of these are gonna be coming up in July.
Right, and that's where, so like, this second one is gonna expire before we have any meeting. I mean, and the reason why we didn't talk about it obviously prior to that is because we didn't have a meeting last month.
And my understanding, you correct me if I'm wrong, is Rob Wesley on an interim basis, kind of trying to do patchwork stuff, so I think that.
Rob and Bill are both.
Yeah.
I think these other three properties that, you know, unless someone has other information, have not saw any type of.
I can only speak to 209 Fairchild, which I can confirm does not have a lawn.
I think.
But the other two, I don't know.
And they won't buy- Yeah, that's, and
It's mounted dirt. Right. But that's the ones, like, there's people living in that house. The 209,
Because they all got conditional.
Yeah, because they moved in, you know.
because the 209 is on my side of the street.
I would suggest that these other three properties be brought to the attention of the town employees who are filling in for and handling building commissioner duties in the interim.
I do know, the Hinch Builders, he spoke to me and he said he's been having a hard time getting a landscaper. He's been trying a while, but, I I did not offer
Having a
that.
hard time getting a landscaper for the price he's willing to pay.
So I guess at this point, I don't think we need a motion for this, but we basically just need to have
That's this one.
the building department make contact with these other three and let them know that the potential, I mean, if they're not gonna be in the 209 Fairchild and 1143 Daniels Court, they should probably be present at our next meeting because they won't be expired by our next meeting, but they will expire directly afterwards. The biggest problem would be the Lahinch Builders, which
That's sidewalk.
expires July, they potentially have over 180 days falls, but that's gonna expire before our next meeting.
And Michelle, do you have a copy of these conditional certificates of occupancy, what the language of that is, if they, what happens if they don't complete it? I mean, I see that it expires.
I did not, but I can get that from Lori.
Yeah, I don't know if we need to call the 3,000 and that
Right.
180 days, or in one case it's 10,000. Because the completion date is 180 days after issuance. So I, you know, I don't think that we have to call it within the 180 days. Because they have 180 days to complete it.
And it's been a tough year for some of that stuff. I'm not trying to make us, you know, watching over their shoulder just for the exact thing, but there ought to be some kind of a process that if we see that this is coming up,
Mhm.
how do we approach it before it's passed? Especially if it's a bond that does expire in 6 months, and I think probably mostly the checks. But I don't know.
And I think part is just that it's a victim of the circumstance of us not having a meeting in May and now us not having a building commissioner in June. And a full-time dedicated building commissioner in June.
So I guess my question is, how do we, so without calling this bond on this first one, how do we potentially get them like, I don't know, a 30-day extension, or would they need to request that?
I don't think there's a process for that.
Because it's kind of our, I mean, it's also, we would have made contact with them or made a motion at that last meeting that we didn't have. So now, kind of potentially some of our own doing, do we? Or do we need them to request that?
It's 4-1-14, no conditional occupancy permit issued pursuant to this section shall be issued for a period of more than 180 days. There's nothing in there that.
Then I think at that point, then this second one.
Especially if you looked at it and there's no headway being done on it. Understand, they're not trying. 180 days is a long time.
Right.
But so did they post this $300? When, you know, can we call these things? I mean, the first one is with them having a petition before the BZA, and they have a hearing later this month. And we'll know when we come back here on July 11th, what the result of that BZA decision is.
Right.
To me, that, you're talking about the first one?
Yes,
Okay, that's a different
yeah, exactly.
deal from, but all the rest of them, it's black and white.
Well, that's why I suggest we give this to Bill Army and Rob Wesley and have them maybe do some legwork here in the next few weeks. And when we were here in April,
Mhm.
I mean, it was still snowing and no one was talking about thinking about putting a lawn in. We didn't meet last month. Now we're here on June 6th and it's like, all right, it's, 80 degrees outside.
For now.
Yeah, so we're thinking about it, but if there's this money and it just says an amount, do we have those bonds? What are they? Is that money in escrow? Where's it posted?
Again,
My understanding,
like this is the issue in not having a building commissioner, because like he's the one that issues these, like we have no say in the conditional certificate of occupancy, that's.
My understanding is this amount is how it should work, is this amount's been posted, they have this time to put it in, and if they don't, then after that time, we can hire to have those get put in and spend this money.
What was there for?
That's what it's there for.
Okay, so if this 180 days passes, it doesn't matter if it's 194 days, I can say, all right, now we're gonna use that money to put this lawn in.
I wanna see the documentation where these people or the builder, somebody escrow, I think this should be escrow money, because these are all new homes. The developer should have put this money in escrow, so the developers gonna want this money back if they put in the yard. If they don't put in the yard, we are.
I know that at least once in the past, I did it with conditional occupancy and it was just a check,
Made to the town of Burns Harbor.
yeah,
That was deposited or just held.
I think it just held it. And then theoretically, a check can expire depending on what the notation on it is.
Yeah, it could expire or the account could be closed. I mean, there's a lot of things that can happen.
Yeah, well, from my point of view right now, we basically either need to have a motion on the table for the calling of that specific one at 1177 Burns Boulevard at the end of that duration.
Well,
Or we need to just all accept the fact that we're gonna have to try and take action at the next meeting after it's already passed.
I would just suggest we're meeting 6 days after that
Okay,
and we can do that then. Let's, rather than calling something, let's get Bill and Rob to put in something. Where's it you, Sarah, you said that you've spoken with the developer and they just,
Yeah, this is conversation, not because I was following it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I guess my other suggestion would be if we could reach out to the building department, and I understand it might be challenging with just Bill and Rob and trying to get this done, but we definitely need to be sending letters out to all three of these remaining ones, which is the 1177 Burns Boulevard, 209 Fairchild, 1143 Daniels Court, because the Fairchild and Daniels Court, those are gonna expire after our next meeting, but before the following one.
yeah.
So they either need to be here or need to have these things.
And it's the developer, it's not the property owner.
well,
But
the one on Daniels Court is owned by the property owner. That's a little awkward situation.
Okay, well, yeah.
But yeah.
The builder is the one who is saying that has the conditional occupancy, but I'm not sure who it's technically written to because the homeowners are doing the landscaping. So that one might be a little tricky.
On that one, they've got another 7 weeks to get it done.
Right. I'm just saying, if somebody owns their own lot and the builder is finished with their project, that may not be a builder developer issue, it may be a homeowner issue, so.
Yeah, the only thing I could say is that the developer. Yeah,
And the one in Corwin's Landing, it includes for a driveway.
And sidewalks. It's not like you could do it in one day. I
That's
mean,
right.
the front yards, you could do it in one day
Yeah.
if you wanted to, even by yourself.
But that just surprised me that with the driveway.
the driveway is intact.
It is, okay.
Yeah, there's no sidewalk or yard in that property. And that's specific, like if that developer is the one responsible for the rest of it, which I would assume, because generally they have to put a sidewalk in. Yeah,
Yeah,
and that hasn't been done.
sidewalks have to be
Right,
installed after there's an occupied structure
Yeah,
on the.
like, and so like that part is not done.
but.
And they've already, that developer's already put in a lawn on another property in that. This spring, summer, whatever you wanna call this season. So like they're actively doing it, they just didn't do this one. So. Yeah, we just need to send the letters. Does anybody else have anything else on bonds, maintenance guarantees, letters of credit? Next thing under new business is, thank you.
Thank you.
Next thing under new business is accessory building corrections. Do we have any update on that, Clay? I know it's been a little bit with the missing of the meeting.
No. No, I mean, I know that there was some discussion after that last kind of marathon meeting on that. And I thought that we were hitting the pause button. That's my understanding.
So whatever we need to do, we need to either, however we need to resubmit the documentation. Because that was, Sarah had prepared a bunch of the corrections. And I think we just basically at this point are trying to figure out how to get it put into ordinance.
I
And
thought I had taken the original ordinance
Mhm.
and corrected what was duplicated or included incorrectly.
And maybe I'm thinking of the other, I know that there was a lengthy discussion at the April meeting on another subject, maybe it was on shipping containers, is that what? we-
Oh, we talked about shipping containers.
Okay. So.
Yeah, so I think what you're speaking of is when we were talking about the use table and whether or not we needed to do that
Yeah.
special exception stuff and we
So
were gonna make it, we were gonna do something with that and then we found out that we didn't need to.
Mhm.
So we stopped that, but, and that's probably maybe where the confusion came in. But what we have is prior to you coming back here, we had made some
It was.
changes
Well,
to,
no, it was discovered that there had been, in the transition, and actually in the original ordinance, it just didn't get caught. We talked about making changes, we voted on the changes. In the ordinance, the change was duplicated instead of
You're
doing
right.
it.
I think I've seen this before, but obviously it's.
15-13-6, and then it's like, and then the other one's like -30.
Yeah, so
We wanna move it to -30.
it was all supposed to be combined to one section for accessory buildings and uses. We're no longer having a special section for detached and for attached.
So
And
you wanna just strike 15-13-6?
Yeah.
and then a couple of provisions that were in 15-13-6 that were to be added to 15-30. Those were, I added those in as additional.
Okay, so do we set this for a public hearing?
Well, I thought the last time that we talked about it,
So,
that you had to do an updated ordinance.
yeah, cause I've been reprimanded in the past that we needed to have an ordinance in hand before I move forward unless it's something that's like really an emergency, so. I'd rather have the ordinance in hand and then go ahead at the next meeting.
And can someone email this to me?
Maybe we'll do it right now.
And then I'll put-
Maybe not.
So that was 15-13-6. I'll put a note on my calendar.
Oh, yeah, 15-13-6, all that is struck, and then we go to 15-13-30. There are a couple of items that are added within that body, and all the lettering has to be changed. I tried to change it, so, but I couldn't get it to work. Now, in the meantime, in case anybody asks, we are still covered for the changes we made to accessory buildings and all those things, because currently town code includes all of our points. You know, that your accessory building can't be taller than your primary building, those kind of things. So, from what I've looked at, we're still okay on what we intended to have be enforced, including the thing about sheds under 200 square feet, so.
Yeah, the biggest issue right now is that I'm trying to get to it. But 15-13-6, there's two different things. There's accessory buildings.
And then there's the one after also, which is also 15.13.6, correct?
Right, so you got storage and the use of shipping containers, which is technically 15-13-6. So we've used that number twice, but the first one, which is detached accessory buildings, needs to be struck at
It was
15-13-6.
intended to be struck,
Yeah,
How did that happen?
I have no idea.
Inattention to detail, put it that way.
So I'm on the Dropbox for the town code, and you're saying,
So if you go to chapter 15 and you look up and you get to 15-13-6, which is gonna be page 89, you will find two 15-13-6s, one of which refers to detached accessory buildings and one of which starts storage and the use of shipping / cargo containers.
So the way that happened, Clay, was we had a phenomenal amount of updates, edits. Not so many changes, just clarifications in chapter 15, 4, 13, and 14. And just somehow when we did it, between the people who were inputting it and doing the ordinance and everything, it just got overlooked.
when I'm on the Dropbox, the 15.13.6 that I'm looking at is just regarding detached accessory buildings.
And if you go to the town website, I think it actually has a duplicated check.
Yeah, because I'm on the website, and it's got.
So the one that you just sent it to me, but the one we want to keep is this one about detached accessory buildings or no?
No,
Not at that location, so 15-13-6, any reference to detached accessory buildings needs to be removed. Because it's in -30, I think now, because it's in there again.
In it, okay.
Trying to find it.
I'm happy to send it to you, but if you want this copy, you can have it.
I mean, if you could send it to me in a Word format, I could.
Yeah, I've got
some
it.
cut and pasting instead of retyping. Yeah, this Dropbox isn't even updated because there's not even a 15.13.26 is excavation, and then that is the last 15.13.
Yeah, so then when I get all the way down to 15-13-30, it talks about accessory buildings and accessory uses. But it's all the updated stuff.
I'm wondering if that document Clay is looking at is different from the one you're looking at. I'm not sure with the Dropbox.
So detached accessory buildings at 15-13-6 only has letters A, B, and C. 15-13-30 goes A through
Oh, it's long way.
P,
Yeah, a lot.
A through P.
Well, then there's a couple added because
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. But that's all in your update. Send that to me.
Yeah, I haven't.
I'll make it a note too. When you call and you're like, what was I supposed to do?
I have done that.
I don't want to rush you if you're so.
No, I'm just, my computer died, so I had to. I'm just trying to find that 13.30. Yeah, this is, what I have is not updated.
Yeah,
you just said it.
Because there was a lot in chapter 15 that they had done. And
So you're saying that's on town code, but I guess just to look at it. Tony might have set this up, and I don't know if we also.
And so
You have
I
access
know,
to this, the Dropbox.
I do not.
Okay.
I just use the town code as Corinne updates it.
Yeah, me too. Like, I stopped using any hard copies because there's too many
I
changes.
saved it as a favorite on my browser.
I just keep downloading.
Tony is the one who put it on
I don't
the
even do that. I go to the
ordinance,
website every time, it
and
just
then Corinne is the
Yeah.
one who's updating it
check
online.
the postcard.
And that's how it came to, well, one of the ways it came to light, is Corinne said, this says two different things.
The way they're changing.
You download online.
Yeah, Corinne, the next one, I mean, she don't see what it was. I don't know if I would have looked back in there or something that.
That stuff.
No, and to be honest, it's not like,
Some sections are
a lot of us missed it, so.
Well, she asked me for clarification, I was like, I have no idea. Like, I was like, I'm at a loss. So,
It sounds like we need to send this to Clay so we can work through drafting an ordinance.
right,
Eventually, yeah. she's-
yeah, absolutely. So we'll do that information to Clay and then. I guess the idea is to work on getting an ordinance together. To fix those. Next thing is go to the order and any other business.
I have nothing. As some of you know, our house is sold and we are moving to South Dakota, so next meeting will be my last meeting.
Renovation. I know that. I know I will.
Who is it?
Yeah. Haven't had the opportunity, no offense to anybody else, but to work with too many people that knows our town as well as you do. So. It was. A pleasure and it was interesting.
What a
There were some moments, but
There have been,
we can still talk though, like we talk an hour a week probably.
there have been times where Sarah and Wilbur are the only two audience members. Also.
Oh, absolutely.
At other meetings, so that'll be.
I mean, it was interesting sometimes to be able to have people from the back with her. I mean, she gets to do it by herself for a while.
You say go to the order, and I look at Sarah's chair, and then realize that she's over there.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's
For procedural, are you appointed by the council or the council president? Who appointed you?
I think that I'm appointed by the council, but I'm not sure.
We should, I guess,
And I believe as a Republican, not as an at-large.
we should just clarify.
It is a party seat.
I think so.
Okay.
We should just clarify that with Jane.
There's a sheet in the
Yeah.
office that shows all of the appointments and whether it's a council or a council president appointment, we'll just have to know which.
So just look at that and
It's in Jane's office,
Yeah.
yeah, so it's.
and then next month, as I think, I don't know who was here, we were talking about all the meetings and that happens when occasionally, but next month, we have the same situation to the 4th of July. Our meeting is Monday, the 11th, and the council will be on Wednesday, the 13th. Correct. So at that Wednesday, the 13th meeting, if Sarah is officially in writing resigned from the planning commission, the council or the council president or whomever can make an appointment.
If you could find something.
Are you okay with the council announcing at this upcoming Wednesday's meeting that there'll be a vacancy?
Yep.
That could be filled as early as the July 13th meeting.
Can you
Thanks
reach
for
out?
pointing out the in writing part. I wasn't sure if I had to do it in writing.
I think it's probably best, I'm gonna give you an email. And you can put an effective date in the future.
Can you reach out to Jane just for clarification as far as the Republican seat and who potentially would have to be notified, whether that's, I mean, is it, so then is it?
Roseanne and Tony will know about it, and then it's really. I mean, when I was the president of council, I relied on the two of them to go find me a Republican that wanted to see. And then I know when Kevin Tracy was the precinct committee, I don't know who the Republican PC is for Westchester 11 now, but
Yeah, I would just rather them like do whatever they need to do, because I understand like it's summertime, it's difficult as it is for us to potentially have a quorum all the time. So,
And I've mentioned it to a couple people, one I thought was Republican was a Democrat, so that didn't work. But yeah, just, I'll see if I can try to also mention it to people I know.
I will entertain a motion. I have a motion.
Second.
I have a second. Roll call.
Travis Dunlap,
Yes.
Nick Loving,
Yes.
Sarah Outman,
Yes.
Bernie Paprad,
Yes.
Jeremy McCarty.
Yes.